You got it.
All right, guys, here we go. We're waiting on the clock. Normal intro. Curtis, give us the cue.
Stand by. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Drone Owners Network Live. I'm your host, Curtis. Joining me today is Randy Foster down in Houston, Texas. Tommy Polo's over there in New Jersey. And somewhere in the middle of Kansas is Abby Lyle. Although I don't think she sounds like she's from Kansas. We got a great show lined up for you, though. Romeo Durscher's here as our very, very special guest. So let's get this show started.
Charge your batteries, lock in those props, and check that airspace. Join us live. This is the Drone Owners Network.
Boom! We are back. This is part 2 of this amazing interview with our good friend, Mr. Romeo Durscher. I love that song. That is such a cool song. Oh, Abby.
Yes.
What happened there?
I multiplied.
You found a friend. Who's your friend?
Well, aside from being my wonderful, darling husband, he is Romeo's best friend, and we couldn't do a show with Romeo without including Mark.
Yay.
So I persuaded him. I persuaded him to come on, and all hell will ensue now.
God help us.
So for this part of the show, all the rules are out. They're gone. Perfect. There's no format. We're just going to have fun here and talk. These are very, very old friends and dear friends that have been hanging out for a long, long time. And we just want to kind of tap into their stories and the progression of how they've moved through the drone universe. And so we don't really know what's going to happen, but we're going to have fun. That's what we do know. And Mark, welcome to the show, by the way, Mark.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be here.
We still need to cover some serious stuff, though, right, Curtis?
We cannot forget about UTech.
Yeah.
UTech just happened. It was one of our news stories in part 1 of this episode. We're graced with Romeo's presence, who was very, very implemental in UTech, and we don't want to let this opportunity slip by without getting some very good inside knowledge from Romeo, from himself. He was there, he saw it, he led it. So let's see what he has to say about it.
So yeah, UTech, the Unmanned Tactical Application Conference that was put together by Flymotion, Ryan English and his team. The whole purpose of this was, and we've seen this in public safety, where we need better training, and not only training on a parking lot or on a soccer field, but real life based scenario training. This is so important, especially in public safety, where every split second counts. And so the whole idea behind this was, let's go to a place where it's Disneyland for public safety and 3-letter agencies to go and train various scenarios. And that's the Guardian Centers, just about 2 hours south of Atlanta. And it's this huge facility, former missile factory, that has been turned into this truly amazing area where you can train pretty much any scenario. And we identified the first few scenarios that should be trained, and attendees were able to really get hands-on experiences and listen to some of the public safety leaders in this space. The challenge right now in public safety is that there's not a lot of standardization, and that's because it takes time to create standards, because we don't know everything just yet. We're still learning how to best use a drone. And I give you a good example in search and rescue. There are so many different ways you can do them, but depending on your environment, if you're in a mountainous area, if you're in a forest, if you're in a mountainous forest area, it changes the way you utilize the technology. What camera, what are you using? What angle of the gimbal are you setting it to? What altitude to fly? What flight pattern? All of this matters. So there has not been enough standardization done. We're seeing more and more coming, and that helps. So this was really meant to bring together not only some of the leading individuals in public safety that have done, active shooters or water rescue, but bring the whole community and then talk about how they are doing it or how they would do it, so we can better understand as a whole how to utilize the technology. So it started on day one were indoor presentations to get everybody a little bit ready on the current state of policy as well as current state of technology. And the day two really started off with one of the best scenarios, active shooter. And you know, we live in times where we have to train for school shootings. I mean, it's a sad state that we have to train for that, but it's reality. It keeps happening. Therefore, we need to be prepared. And the scenario for active shooter was, was a parade for a statue that was being moved to a different location. So very real case scenario. And there were actors involved, and suddenly an active shooter started shooting out of a building and hitting, the actors. And so drones were deployed. There was an incident command set up. There was an air bus. First 1, 2, 3 drones were deployed. One was, Overwatch, trying to find where is that shooter, while the SWAT team on the Bearcat was getting ready to deploy to get to the location. So it was all as real as possible. And you had gunshots, you had flashbangs, you had people screaming. It was chilling to see all of that. And after the episode was done, we all came together, we did a debrief, talked about it, and then we did it again, this time with other attendees on the flight controls. And so it will be played over and over again. A second scenario was a C-130 airplane crashed, and several crewmen were missing. It started off at sunset and carried over into nighttime. And this whole field where this airplane crashed was set on fire, and it felt real. And so now you have to different lighting conditions and again, incorporated into the incident command system with the Airbus, communicating properly, just amazing. Day two was a hazmat scenario, and then it was a tanker that got into an accident and spilled chemicals to understand what kind of chemicals are we dealing with. There were injured people. The very same scene then was used for the accident reconstruction in the afternoon. And then on the last day in the morning, we did water rescue, where the M210 was used to deliver equipment to a bridge that collapsed and people were swept down the river. And we also dropped life vests, life preservers to those individuals. And all of this was trained, and people had an opportunity to do it themselves. And it was tremendously helpful. And in the afternoon was what I thought the best part, and that's the NIST. So NIST is the National Institute for Standard Technology. They created a training park for drones. And it's a super simple way to build this. In essence, it's buckets that has information inside the bucket. And you put the buckets in different angles. So you have to utilize the drone, different altitudes, adjust camera. You have to adjust, exposure to sometimes see into the bucket. And we placed those in the rubbles of a partially collapsed building. And so the people had to fly in very narrow environments with stuff hanging from the ceiling and no GPS and compass interference. And they had to go to these buckets and see the information inside, so getting the intel. And it was a tremendous and I myself learned a lot too. And I'm really excited to do this again next year.
As you were explaining the scenario training, I cannot be the only one that was visualizing the next Jerry Bruckheimer, Michael Bay film. It sounded incredible. I mean, it's, I'd like to point out, it's an awful thing that we have to accept this as the new reality. right? It's terrible that that exists. But that being said, I'm very thankful for the products that we have now, the training that we have, and companies like DJI to be able to step up to the plate with someone like Romeo and to participate and actively get involved to where we have a resource, we have a solution, a way to help counteract that kind of a way to respond to those kind of scenarios. So that being said, I just want to put that out there, and man, it's that just sounds amazing, Romeo, that you guys were able to pull all that off.
Yeah, FlyMotion did an amazing job in putting all of this together, planning all of this, and executing. This was extremely helpful. And you know, I have to say one thing. A lot of people today they feel threatened that law enforcement has drones, and they feel like, oh, they're going to be spying on me. But that's absolutely not the case. The standard operating procedures of every department I've come across so far limits what the drone can be used for. But what they actively want to do is two things. They want to utilize the technology to take care of an incident more safely, meaning that they want to keep their officers more safe with better information, but they also want to end that incident in a way that everybody is safe, not only the public, but also potentially the perpetrator. And a perfect example just happened on Friday in Atlanta, just like miles outside of where we were, where a robbery suspect was fleeing from law enforcement, and they were following that individual in a vehicle, stopped on the freeway, and they utilized a drone to get a better look of what's inside the vehicle, because they were afraid that he was armed, and you know, these type of scenarios can quickly escalate into something you don't want. But because they had visuals on the individuals, because they could see inside the car, they could make better decisions, and it ended without a shot fired. And that's a huge win for everyone involved.
Huge win, huge win. Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That's really, it's amazing. It's amazing. And we're starting to see more and more of those play out. And man, if they can stop an incident without the trigger ever having to be pulled, without putting the public in danger, officer safety, offender safety, in the public, that's the win for everybody.
Well, let me do a little kind of a follow-up to that, because a large portion of our audience is new drone pilots, and the things that you guys are talking about, you're talking about setting the precedent, setting the standards for what is going to be moving forward. But a new drone pilot who's interested in following in you know, whether it's in Mark and Abby's shoes and doing you know, scene reenactment and stuff like that, or whether, you know, working in fire and rescue. In fact, a good prime example would be the Houston flood. When that happened, I noticed in so many different forums and groups, guys saying, I'm just going to drive out there and fly my drone and help out. And that's really not the way to do it. Is there, and this can be for Mark, Abby, or Romeo, is there a roadmap for somebody that wants to do this and wants to be, you know, helpful, for them to kind of head in that direction? Is there training that's involved in it? Is there, I mean, it's not just flying your drone. We all know that. I mean, resources that you have to take with you, because you're going into a place with no electricity, no food. You know, you got to take a lot of stuff with you when you go into a hazardous area that's under, you know, been in disaster. But anyway, I'll turn this over to any one of you that want to answer that. Is there a roadmap for somebody that's starting out that wants to get into this? No.
Yeah, absolutely. The challenge really is the volunteers. They mean well, and they should be commended for their will to help. There is a time and place for volunteers and volunteer organizations to come and assist, but it's not during the initial response time, because you have to understand that if you go into an area like Houston, for example, where you have this destruction and this flooding, you're not integrated into the larger incident command system. You may become a victim yourself by not being, you know, trained, and now you're going to be pulling resources away to rescue you. You may not have a place to sleep or eat, but the most important part is you're not part of the incident structure, so therefore nobody knows that you're flying, and still have manned airspace. So during the initial response time, let the public safety and disaster management teams take care of the flying. After that, there is going to be plenty of work to be done, from mapping to inspection. But please, please, please don't fly your drone active law enforcement or public safety missions underway, because you could impact their operation, you could impact manned aircraft operation, and you do not want to be that guy or gal that creates a delay. We had it in the wildfires where drone operators, looky looks, wanted to take cool video, but grounded air operation. You don't want to be that. Please, during the initial response time, keep your drone grounded.
Yeah, we never go in and do. No, we're not on. We never go in, without prior authorization if there's any case that we're working on, and generally we're after the accident anyway. But again, we'd get the clearance that we need before we went in and did anything.
So you guys kind of didn't. You did answer my question, but you didn't. Is there like a training, or is there a path of things that people need to learn? I mean, there's more to it than just flying your drone, obviously.
I mean, there is. I think obviously the first thing is to learn to fly your drone safely and effectively. That's where it really begins. And then once you know how to do that, you can then start thinking about what you're going to do with it next. I think you see it a lot with photographers who, they know they want to use a drone, but they need to understand how to use the drone. It's not just another camera. It is a camera, but there's more to it.
It's also my understanding that when you get into anything that is under the aegis of a governmental agency that is involving search and rescue, where there is an organized response, I think you are prohibited from being involved in that unless you are certified, with your 107. And even then, you have a number of restrictions that would prevent you from taking part. So that if you're talking about a beginning, an incipient user, he or she almost certainly is not going to be legal in that situation, let alone have the basis of operational functionality that you would need to integrate with a search and rescue operation. Now, in the instance of, let's say, an ad hoc, the neighbor, the ranch next door to you has a fire, I can see people being able to do very useful things as a volunteer basis on a non-organized, non-public response basis. And that's where I think every competent drone pilot can be able on an emergency basis to provide a source and a resource that would be extremely useful and valuable. And the more that people can be competent flyers, the more they're going to be in a position to step in. But I think all of the things Romeo is talking about are organized response, where state, county, municipal, or even federal authorities are involved, and you can't be involved legally, even at a basis, without you have to have the certification. And even if you have the certification, you cannot be participating legally unless you're under the auspices of the air boss, or at least the authority that is has jurisdiction.
That was the answer I was looking for.
Well, thanks, Mark. Well
because done. In a roundabout way, no, I wanted to do this in a roundabout way, because there's so many people that say, I'm just going to go help and that's all there is to it. But you really can't, unless you are a law enforcement officer or a fireman, or you work for one of the governmental agencies. You really can't go in there. You're going to come in on the tail end, maybe work for an insurance company or something like that, after everything's over. But as far as being part of and going down there and thinking you're going to make all kinds of money, no, you're not when it first happens. And
even if you want to help, Curtis, there's obviously restrictions there, and you may be under pressure by your neighbors who are like, oh, you fly a drone, get over there, you can go and help, and then you feel pressured by others to go and get in there. But that's definitely not what you want to do.
Maybe Romeo can give his cell number and people can call him to get authority before they go.
That's a great idea. We're actually going to put Romeo's cell number on the bottom of the screen. So if anybody just wants to call or text, feel free. I'm just kidding.
Right.
I'm totally kidding.
So let's get into drone crashes and mishaps, like the early days with Mark. Something about trees and the oceans. This is going to be the fun part of the show.
Let's point out that because of Mark and Romeo and all of their mishaps, it really helped DJI to get a very strong financial foothold in the market because they actually they stepped up production to keep up with the demand of Mark and Romeo.
They did. When I first met Mark, I walked into his front room and I was accosted by bits and pieces of drones and some dolls' heads, I seem to remember.
Whoa. It got weird.
Got weird. Too much info.
Got a little weird.
No, I everybody likes to pretend they're these great pilots, and maybe everybody is, but I'm an idiot, and I have given my share of entertainment to the masses by flying into trees on a number of occasions. And I learned a lot from it. I don't do that anymore. But boy, when I started out, Romeo can tell you, we had to, we had on speed dial the arborists who can climb up trees, and I think the highest, we had about 100-foot redwood that I put a Phantom in once, and we had a guy actually climb up with nothing more than a couple spikes on his heels. It was amazing.
That is amazing. Wow.
Oh yeah, there were several of those. There was another one right above a homeless camp because we just wanted to get that one last shot.
Why wouldn't it be above a homeless camp? Sure.
And it was an S-800. It landed right on top in this big tree and blinking.
Yeah, it was the old days, the Wukong, and it had a very powerful. Most of you who flew those would remember that LED was one hell of a bright purple flashing light, and so we have the damn drone suspended in the canopy above this homeless camp, and the LED is flashing, and these figures come out. It just reminded me so much of 2001 when the monolith and the apes and these denizens shuffled out and were pointing at it and trying to figure out what it was. Was it a threat? Could it be converted into alcohol? It was and we finally at about 9 o'clock said, we can't get a ladder till tomorrow. So we went home, and I had no idea what we'd find the next morning, and found a bunch of hungover homeless people underneath it still looking at it, and we got it down.
I'm glad that they didn't drink your S-800.
Well, if they could have, they would have. It's pretty crazy.
Some Wukong hooch.
We did actually. Romeo and I had so many, and some of them were not pilot error. I can confirm that. I'm not going to give you a percentage, but some were not. But I remember one incident in particular. We were asked to go. Actually, I think Stanford University asked us to film a surfer that was going to be used in part of their promotional material, and so we had a brand new GH4 on a Zen Moose on it was brand new gimbal, brand new camera, and we had this huge battery. I can't even remember what the milliamps were, and we were all set. So we're off of the coast, Big Sur, and we're flying, and man, Romeo's looking over my shoulder, and he saw the voltage drop because we would run a voltage monitor for the batteries, and he started yelling, bring it back. And man, I pulled the stick back, and there's nothing worse than you've got several thousands of dollars, and it's just slowly going down to the and the surfer thinks we're coming in for a shot, so he's contorting himself, and the damn drone goes down, and it just slowly sinks.
No.
And it's gone. I mean, there was no way to retrieve it. I don't know how deep we were off an area, and we were on a 100-foot cliff, but there was nothing we could do. And if you fly enough, you'll have those experiences. And that's one of the reasons that I always tell people that think they're going to have a commercial drone operation. There will be times, even if you are the most careful pilot, the vicissitudes of the system. It's not a fail-safe system, but because of the nature of LiPo batteries, the nature of ESCs, you will have a failure. And if you don't take into account the fact of what happens when that failure occurs, you need to be, number one, aware of it, and number two, aware to pay for it, where you're going to have to pay for it. And certainly the amount of money that Romeo and I saw go into the surf or into the, there was that time in Bryce National Park before it was illegal to fly there. And they've got one of my new drones there. And
I contacted Jeff Foster from Creative Live and tried to get some footage. Apparently, that he was not able to come up with it. He's traveling, and he was like, he goes, I could, but I'm traveling. And then there was also kind of a copyright kind of situation because it belongs to Creative Live. We couldn't actually reuse that, but I'm sure you guys can tell the story of how. I'll let you guys go with it. I'm gonna jump out of here. Jump in.
Well, this one for once was 100% Romeo. I flying indoors and spotlights shining in your face, and I couldn't really see where the drone was, and of course I clipped the ceiling, all on live broadcast. So it was one.
I was watching it.
Well, that's
very impressed.
That's the interesting trivia. Abby was subscribing to that Creative Live event and saw Romeo and I, didn't know us, hadn't met us, and she was, number one, appalled at my haircut.
I said, "Who's that strange
number
dude
two,
with a terrible haircut and a
well,
strange
number
thing
two,
around his
she
neck?"
said, "Are they gay?" And so,
not that there's anything wrong with that.
I was just going to say that. Not that there's
anything wrong with that.
Hey.
And so then months later, Romeo and I are helping Doc Brown do an Adobe workshop at the ghost town in Nevada.
We briefly covered this.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that is where we first met, and then later.
I still thought he was a strange dude, but
my haircut was better.
It was a little better.
But so for the record, you both crashed. Just Romeo's was the only one that was on film.
Well, I think I've probably been on film.
No, I mean at the Creative Live event.
Creative Live.
Oh no, that's right. Romeo did it all.
Whoa. Mark, you crashed a Creative Live too, except it wasn't on film.
Well, I was.
Then hey, if it wasn't on camera, it never happened. That's in my world, that's the key, man. If the camera didn't see it, it never happened.
That's exactly right.
That's not how I remember it, Romeo. I seem to remember what's his name from 3D Robotics being there. I think he was on a crash.
Colin Gwynn.
I didn't say it.
I did.
And just for the record, these are not crashes; these are just unscheduled landings.
Right.
So
that's
let's
where
be
we're
clear.
gonna. These are amongst friends. They're unscheduled landings. I like that. So, what about this Irish Prime Minister that you messaged me about, Romeo?
Oh, this goes back also, many years ago. Before I joined DJI, I was asked to go to a conference in Ireland, and the drone data conference, something like that. And I went and I did a presentation on the utilization of drones. Mark and I had just come back from our friends' trip. And before I got my presentation in this beautiful old castle, some of the presenters were ushered into this library. And it was a beautiful old library, and I was just amazed to be there. And all the doors were closed, and suddenly these individuals in suits walk in with this other guy, and he was introduced as the Taoiseach. And never heard that word before, so I figured, that must be a religious leader. I'm thinking to myself, I wonder if he's Catholic or Protestant. And he's talking and answering questions, and he kept saying stuff like, "Oh, I will have my team look at it." And I'm like, this guy really knows a lot of people. So I grabbed my phone and I'm trying to figure out how to spell Taoiseach to get more information. And it takes a while and suddenly comes up, and I read about it, and it's the Prime Minister of Ireland. And at that very same moment, my name was called to be introduced to the Taoiseach. And I was like totally flustered. I went over and I said, I am so sorry. Until just several seconds ago, I didn't know who you were. And he thought that was the best. And we had this conversation. And one of my friends, actually, you can see him back here, astronaut Reed Wiseman, he was on the space station during that time. And he had sent me a picture of Ireland when they flew over Ireland. And it was one of those days where there were no clouds in Ireland. And he sent me that pictures, and I showed it to the Taoiseach. And he was like, oh my God, here's my private email address, mail me that picture. And so it's amazing to have that experience and not knowing what you're walking into.
That's incredible.
Was that the same conference, Romeo, where we came back and were trying to make it look like the drone had flown over from Ireland coming into Santa Cruz? And then we had that bottle of Jameson's whiskey, and Mark pinged the memory card out, and then we were all crawling around on our hands and knees.
Yeah, that was so the drone data conference was in Ireland and in Silicon Valley. They would alternate, and we did some amazing footage for the conference along the coast. And you know, in the old days, when you press the SD card, it would like pop out, and Mark pressed on that SD card, and that sucker came out like a bullet.
It's still there.
And we were on our knees for like an hour trying to find that SD card.
With the big bottle of Jameson's, it looked like we were all throwing up, didn't it?
Never found that SD card.
No, and we hadn't had a sip.
That's what you're gonna. That's your story. You're gonna stick to it.
Yes.
Yeah, they're sticking with it. All right.
Yeah. Maybe we can change this up just a little bit. Romeo, and of course, Mark and Abby, you can also answer this too. What does the future of drones look like?
That's a great question. I think, you know, we need to understand that, and I mentioned that before in part one. If you haven't seen part one yet, go back. It's a great episode. But in part one, I said that the drone is a data collection device. And that sets the stage, because the data is what we want out of the drone. And in essence, what we're trying to do is the moment we take the data, so the moment we take the picture or the video, until we can make a decision based of it, have actionable data, we want to reduce that time to as low of a time span as possible. And I'll give you an example. If you are battling a fire and you see hotspots on your live video feed, you can immediately make a decision. So the time from getting the data to making a decision is pretty much a second. If you're doing a mapping project and you take 10,000 images and you have to now process those images, it may take several hours until you get your end product. So if we can reduce those times from gathering data to having actionable data, we're successful. And so what we're going to be seeing, in my opinion, in the drone space is more solutions to help. For example, AI, artificial intelligence. And I'm super fascinated about this, because we did an AI project after the Reading wildfire, where we built a model that would help detect damaged buildings from non-damaged buildings. And through a company called Live Leash, we built these models. And now imagine if you set up a flight pattern over a community, and it will fly the mission, and it will come back, land, and give you an executive summary of how many homes have, 100% damage, 50% damage, how many vehicles are damaged. That's tremendous information, because up until now, those are people on the ground with paper and pen that go from one lot to the next doing that assessment. And that takes hours. So the future, in my opinion, is not just hardware driven, but software driven. What do you think, Mark and Abby?
Well, I think that it's, you've got a couple curious things that are going on here. The first is that, and most people, when they think of the drone, they actually think of a camera. And we can talk about it, as Romeo, I think, quite properly points out. it's really you should think of it more as a sensor, because we have data collection now from a large number of tools. But still, right now, in terms of bread and butter, most people are flying a drone that's equipped with a camera. It's almost standard equipment. And the camera itself is a mature technology that's been integrated into our lives, video and still imagery, so much so that it's more than intuitive. It's the drone provides a placement. I've often heard the old, it's a tripod in the sky. And, there's a lot of truth to that. The point is that the drone allows everybody, from the day they are able to fly it without crashing, they are able to have a camera in a position they never could have had before. That now has become a given. And I can't imagine a law enforcement, a forensic company, a surveying company. I can't imagine any of these data acquisition sources operating without a drone. So the term is, the drone is ubiquitous. And frankly, we don't even think of it as a drone anymore. It's just, about 90% of our cases we use it. What do you think?
No, I do. I think it's a tool that we use. It's just part of our toolbox.
Yeah, and we've I always remember when I used to have a CB radio, and I'd be talking to truckers, and it was a fad, and in 3 years it was done. The drone had the fad, and it is basically done. But guess what? What's left behind is much bigger than the fad. The drone has revolutionized, certainly in our work, forensics. It's unthinkable. I actually went back and I was looking today at some of my old emails, and about 2010 is when I started earnestly building capable multi-rotors with cameras, and it overnight changed everything. And it was just hard to replicate that. In our lifetimes, there will be very few events like that, such as, MP3s, I guess, or the web. But the drone, at least in our field, is the biggest thing that there ever was. It changed completely our ability to do work for our clients.
Everybody's gone to sleep.
No,
saying that.
It's true though, because it's I know I'm hearing all these different industries, all these different businesses, and every single one of them has been able to grasp on and use this data collection device, whether it's for, pretty pictures, whether it's for news video, whether it's for, accident reconstruction, whether it's for law enforcement. I mean, there's so many things. It is everywhere. Insurance inspections. I mean, there's so much stuff, it has changed the way things are done. It really has, just like what Mark said with the internet,
and I want to mention what we have seen now, and something that's in our industry and related industries, what's changed forever. There is this extremely robust field of technology, that being LiDAR scanning. And we're affiliated with Faro scanners, but certainly Leica, Trimble, many of the manufacturers out there have these huge, well-funded, well-developed data systems based on ultra high resolution laser scanning. And it turns out that the drone, through mapping, and in our case we use Pix4D, it's a natural ancillary tool that fits hand in glove with this completely independent, separately developed industry. So we have laser scanners, but I cannot imagine a project where we get our laser scanners out that we don't supplement with a drone, because the drone can acquire in 20 minutes to an hour 10 to 100 times the area that we can cover with our scanners. Now, lower resolution, but that's what makes it great. So you have this ultra high resolution laser scanning, maybe 500 to 700,000 feet. And then you've got 2,000-3,000 feet of territory with drone mapping. And you can use, now there are tools like Autodesk Recap, lets you easily merge and register the drone data with laser scanning data. And so there are people out there, I'm sure, didn't even think about drones, but they've been using laser scanners for 5 or 10 years. Well, I guarantee you within the next year, they're going to be using drones because it's become required. It's what the clients require, and it's what the demands of the system require.
One of the leading questions that Romeo kind of mentioned to me was to ask about, is there truly an enterprise market?
Well, absolutely, and I think we're starting to see that public safety is right now one of the fastest growing enterprise verticals. And public safety, while it's not for profit, it falls under the enterprise side of things because the needs are very, very specific. But we're starting to see utility inspection, power line and gas pipeline inspection, more and more. And again, you know, it's utilizing today's technology with procedures that, you know, have been the same for decades. You know, the guy that goes up onto the tower to inspect the tower, now we can do that with a drone and get the information already. So that guy can now go up already with the replacement part or with the proper tools to fix or maintenance what's needed. So we're saving time, we're making it less risky. So yeah, there is an enterprise market, and more the ROI is here. But the ROI, that's why I said it's so important that we minimize that time between data capture and in essence analytics and have the actionable data. Then that's where the ROI really comes into play. But we will also see the drone being used for other things than just the data collection. I truly believe at some point we will see more delivery of goods through the drones. It will likely not be what Amazon, you know, several years ago forecasted, because that's going to be extremely difficult to implement. But we will see, and we're already seeing it, the drone delivery to areas where it's hard to reach, like up on mountains during disasters. In Africa, like zipline, delivering medication to close distances. I mean, we're already seeing some of these applications, and more will come. And we will see more autonomous functionalities where the drone will deploy from a pod and do the mission and come back to the pod, and potentially without human interference. That to me is super exciting. But, you know, it's the Jetson future, but we're much closer than 5 years ago.
Sure. Romeo, you told me once about a major airport that was using drones. Is that still the case?
Yes. I mean, think about this concept. Everybody is up in arms about drones and manned aircraft and airports. Yet there are already airlines, like American Airlines, using drones to inspect their airplanes at airports where, you know, planes are taking off and landing just yards away. And I mean, that to me is tremendously changing the way we see the technology. And we're still super early on. I have a lot of like fire departments that come and say, hey, you know, we want to start a drone program. Are we already behind the curve? And no, nobody right now is behind the curve, because we're still in this exploratory phase of trying to understand how can we best use this technology. And I think it's super fascinating.
You see what UPS is doing with theirs now? They have like a fleet almost now. They're transporting medical samples and blood. I think over 12 miles they were doing.
Yeah, and Tom, here's something interesting, and here's something that I have a little bit of a problem with this industry, and that is the industry still makes a lot of claims. You know, drones, you know, do something faster, less expensive, but there's no real evidence-based data behind it. And a lot of companies make these amazing claims, like this drone or this software solves or reduces crime by X amount of percent. Well, where's the data? But here, in this particular case, we're getting into a really interesting area, because at some point, the FDA will come and say, hey, you're using technology that is, doing live samples, maybe a heart transplant, blood, whatever the case may be. We need to go through the proper certification process so that we can validate that the technology works properly. I don't know if you read, but in Switzerland, just a month or two ago, a drone flying across the lake, delivery of blood samples went into the lake and drowned.
Oh.
And at some point, we will have to go through this approval process because it is a medical device, it is a medical tool. If we're putting a heart on it or if we're putting a blood sample on it, last thing we want is that thing come down on a playground and there's blood everywhere.
Yeah, there was an instance they transported, I believe it was a kidney. I can't remember where it was, but there was a kidney transported and it was successful at one point. I don't know how much they've gone past that, but I did read that one too. It's amazing.
I think we live in amazing times, and we're seeing more and more like this. But with every single step that we go up, we will be required at some point to verify and provide proper certification that this technology works. Because if we're delivering a defibrillator and we have only minutes for this drone to arrive so that we can save that person, we got to make sure that defibrillator gets there 99.99999% of the time.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's the tough part.
So we're starting to get close to that time, and I don't want to let Romeo go before we have a couple, for one, a chance to hit the chat and see if there's any questions there. Maybe shout out to a couple people that are in the chat, and then I've got a couple little things I want to ask Romeo as well, just to get his feedback on.
I also want to ask him, what about some drone events that you are really excited about for this year or next year if they've already passed? And Mark and Abby, you can jump in on this as well if there's something that people should attend as far as a drone event.
Yeah, so some of the favorite events, UTech just last week was amazing. I'm looking forward to next year. Then AUVSI is coming up in Chicago at the end of April, beginning of May. That's turning into more of a commercial drone exhibit. It still has a lot of military applications on there as well. I'm really looking forward to that one. I'll be speaking there as well. And then in September is one of my favorite drone events here in the US. That's Inner Drone. And Inner Drone has really moved from a consumer-focused event to a more enterprise type of event. But then I'm looking forward next month in Europe, the European Emergency Number Association conference in beautiful Dubrovnik, Croatia. This is a partnership I started over 4 years ago to really get a better understanding of public safety. And if there are any viewers from the public safety sector in Europe, this is a perfect place to learn more about the technology, meet some of the key people, because INA really tries to bring new technologies into public safety for the greater good of the people that are being served. So those are some of my, Mark and Eddie, what do you guys like to see this year?
Well, I certainly would endorse Inner Drone. I've always found that to be a good mixture of current and maybe kind of cutting edge stuff. There's stuff you see there and then you never see it again, but you're ahead of the game for having seen it, because the people who are trying to get a foothold often will get a booth there, and some of the stuff is close to laughable and some of it's become extremely important and useful technology. Most of our other events are more esoteric and within our sort of our bailiwick, such as some of the forensic seminars and the accident reconstruction seminars, so they wouldn't be of interest to the general public. But certainly I would say I would give a shout out to the online webinars that are offered through Pix4D and their website. Anybody who's interested in geospatial work or mapping with drones, there's a couple new webinars that they've published on their site. And within the past couple of months, Faro Technology published a really interesting one that I was participating in, involving the use of laser scanners in drones. And so those would be two I would throw out from a personal interest.
Hey, let me jump into this into our live chat that's happening right now. We've got some people participating. William R. William, and as well as William Jason, not to be confused, two different folks there. Lauren from our previous broadcast, Denauer is in there as well. Just wanting to Keith Landy's in there. One of the things that Romeo, I'm apprehensive because I think I know the answer to this.
Yeah.
But Lauren asked, question for Romeo: can he comment on the anticipated new release next month? If so, is it going to be a new Inspire?
Wait, we have a release next month?
The Phantom 6, I can tell you right now, the Phantom 6 is coming.
We're going to skip the 5.
Don't even start it.
That's what we thought. Now, what's funny is, I wanted to ask Romeo this because it's always the plumber that has the leaky pipes at home, And here's a guy, Romeo Durscher, that is, he's up to his eyeballs in drones. The guy lives it. He probably dreams about drones or has nightmares. Not sure, but I have this question. I know William Jason has the same question. We want to know. What's your go-to drone right now? We're at the end of March. We're March 30th, 2019 right now. So if I timestamp this so that we can, when we go back, we won't think it's outdated. What is your go-to drone right now? And whatever drone that is, what is in your your everyday carry kit for that drone? What do you take out when you go?
Yeah, good question.
That is a great question. And, it's similarly to the photographer's camera. It's the camera that you have with you that you can use the fastest and best. And it has become like that. Our phone camera it's the camera that you have with you most of the time. For me, it's kind of similar. Something that I can carry and easily deploy, but that has a good sensor. So I'm using right now the Mavic 2 Pro most of the time when I do some of my aerial photography stuff. But there are times when I take my Inspire 1 out, because that is still one of the most amazing platforms, and it changed. That release, Mark and I, we were at the release party for the Inspire 1, and when we saw this really cool looking platform that like transitions in flight, we had never seen anything like this. And to this day, that day transformed the drone industry, not only because of the coolness of that platform, but the SDK was released at the same day, the software development kit. So a drone deployer picks 4D that they can create apps that interact and are built on top of the platform. That changed the ecosystem. But today, a Mavic 2 Pro is an amazing platform. And in my everyday kit, I have at least 3 batteries with me. I have a car charger. I have my ND and polarizer filters. And that, if you have all of those, you can create an incredible project in pretty much no time.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I've flown your Inspire 1 with you before, and I know and it's one of my favorite aircrafts as well. And I still have mine, and it definitely has a special place in my heart. And yeah, so I agree with you there. And that Mavic 2 Pro is an amazing aircraft, and I use it for work. I use it for pleasure. It's good. How often does Romeo fly? For fun, not for work, work, for fun.
See, when I first started the job, I was under the impression that, I will be flying every day. And reality hit that, holy cow, I'm not flying nearly enough as much as I wanted to. But I do fly a lot for work. But I also enjoy aerial photography, and I fly as much as I can. So a drone is with me every trip I go to. There is either a work drone with me or then a personal drone, or sometimes both. And even though I work at DJI, I still buy my own drones, so I can use them for my stuff, because to me, it's so relaxing to see the environment in a different perspective, to do something fun, to do something creative, something that, we may have not seen. I love doing, tiny planets. I love doing all these different projects that are not your norm. And actually at Inner Drone, one of my sessions is about that. Don't just take a single image, be more creative, have fun. And I think to me, that's one of the ways I relax. And so I fly as much as I can.
Wow. Well, hey, and I want to point out, because I know we've covered a lot of information here, and Romeo has talked to us about all of his public safety integration stuff. It's incredible. It's incredible. And you're looking at a guy that is in it. He is so in it. But let's not forget, Romeo Durscher is also a very accomplished photographer. And if you guys do not follow him, you're missing out.
Yeah.
If you're watching this webcast, you are computer savvy enough to figure this out. Romeo Durscher's Instagram is visual aerials. Find visual aerials. Just look it up. If you found this webcast, you can get on the Google and surf the interwebs to find visual aerials. If you want to see some amazing photography, that's where you're going to see it. And this is the guy right here that's behind that, as well as Mark. I think Mark is also part of visual aerials. And so these two chaps are the ones that are making those beautiful pictures. So yeah, definitely check them out. Follow them if you're not following them.
Thank you, Randy.
I smashed the follow button.
Well done.
Anybody got anything else they want to add here before we close this thing out?
I think we're covered on the chat logs. It looks good. Thank you everybody for participating. Thank you for being interactive and playing along with us, and just being a part of this whole experience. Obviously, we are honored to have to Mark as well as Romeo on this show. It's been a real treat for all of us here at Drone Owners Network that organize these things.
Oh yeah, we really, really appreciate it. By the way, for anybody that, hang on one second, we got to hit another button here, or Randy's going to kill me. Abby is going to be a almost regular part of our show, based on how much work she has in front of her as far as working with Mark and stuff. But she's going to try to make as much time as she possibly can. Brings a lot to it. For those of you that heard the intro, that's her voice. We have to thank Romeo for that, because I put out the call.
Thanks, Romeo.
I put out the call and said, and Randy made this suggestion. Randy said we could use a female English voice in the intro of our show. And I said, well, I'll just post it on my Facebook page. And Romeo saw the post, and he says, there's a lovely young lady named Abby. She would be wonderful for this. I met Abby online. Holy mackerel, she is just a hoot and a holler. She's a lot of fun. And we've just decided not only we're going to use her voice in the intro, and she does voiceovers at work all the time, we're also going to incorporate her into the show as much as we possibly can as a co-host. So we're happy to have her on board. Thank you, Romeo, for introducing us. You just really...
Champ. Well done, Romeo.
we're kind of some static guys, and she comes in and just throws us a left curve all the time. So we're really looking forward to being working with her and doing a whole bunch of stuff. And thank you, Mark, for letting us borrow her, by the way.
Anytime.
Thank you, Mark.
Anytime.
Romeo, any closing thoughts?
Listen, I do want to thank all of you, Curtis, Randy, Tom, Abby, Mark. This was very special because it's nice to see this community, and you all have been around for a long time to see all the crazy changes for the good and sometimes also for the bad, but you've stuck with it. And you are perfect examples of what passion and what interest can do. And what we're seeing today is we're seeing new jobs being created thanks to this technology, new ways of doing a job function. And we are all ambassadors out there. This is not just me. I just have been lucky enough to be in certain places at the right time, but you guys are doing the hard work. You are spreading the message. You're getting me a platform to share some of my stories and recommendations. And thank you for that. And thank you for being great ambassadors. There's so much more to come, and I'm excited to be part of all of it.
Well, we definitely had a blast today. We definitely appreciate it. So that's going to do it for us. We're going to get out of here. We're going to probably go have a glass of wine and chat a little bit more, but we want to thank everybody for joining us today. You guys rock, and we've got a great show coming up next week. We're going to be bringing in the CEO from Skylum with the new Air Magic software, so we're going to be checking that out. So anyway, Thank you guys very much, and we will see you all next time. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Drone.
The show is over. Why are you still here, Dave? Dave's not here. Ha ha ha. I made a joke. You are in a restricted area. Unauthorized access. Violation code 356874. Cyber intrusion detected. Security protocol initiated. Begin hacking user database. Firewall penetration successful. Encryption sequence initiated. Rootkit uploaded. Botnets activated. Distributed denial of service attack. Begin now. Malware generated. Goodbye, loser.